Hi everyone, and welcome to our video about teamwork. As you will probably have already experienced, there are many challenges of working in teams. The classic challenges are things like somebody not doing the work, arguments amongst the team, or confusion amongst the team. If somebody takes the lead but doesn't at the expense of others' ideas, and not meeting deadlines. So what I want to look at is what are the reasons why these things might happen, because if you look at the reasons why someone is not doing the work, for instance, or why somebody's causing confusion among the group, then it's useful to identify the reason, because you can then try and solve that particular problem. The example here of somebody not doing the work might be for a variety of reasons, including competing commitments, or they might be unclear about what the priorities are, or have a different set of expectations about the quality of the work that's expected. There might also be some confusion about the task and so on. So if that's the case, then you might have a chat with your team member about any of those particular issues. So competing commitments, you might need to have a talk as a team about how much time and how much effort do you want to, as a team, put in together on this piece of work. Confusion about the task, that a conversation about that can help to raise questions and give you direction on terms of, do you need to answer the questions as a team, or do you need to seek external guidance from your tutor or your lecturer, for instance. When there's arguments amongst the team, that can often be to do with personality clashes or different understandings of the task and different expectations about what people's roles are in the group. And there can also be conflict when there's a lack of a clear process for voicing ideas. So have a think about, if there are arguments amongst your team, what kind of strategies can you take to make sure that everyone gets a say and everyone gets time to clearly voice their expectations and present their points of view, so that you can resolve the differences. When there's confusion as well, so some people might kind of make assumptions about, oh, well, so-and-so is going to do that section, the other person's going to do that section, I only need to do this particular part. If there's confusion, if there's different expectations, then that's going to set up problems later on down the track. So a lack of leadership can be a problem there too. So if in your team you decide on clear roles, have a leader, have a clear set of expectations, that can really help as well to prevent that confusion. It can also help when you get confused halfway along to have a meeting to decide, well, what do we need to do next? How do we get clarity on this? If somebody is dominating, if somebody's taking the lead role, it could be because that particular person feels like there's a bit of a vacuum, that nobody else is taking leadership. So it can lead to other people in the team not feeling like they're getting enough time to voice their ideas, or feeling like it has to be so-and-so's way or the highway. So make sure that as a team you have a chat about how you're going to voice different expectations, what you're going to do if people have different ideas about how to approach somebody and how to approach a particular problem. Have a think also about having actual roles assigned. So if somebody wants to be the leader and if everyone agrees, then that usually makes it a bit more harmonious. So not meeting deadlines is another challenge, and that can often be to do with a lack of clarity around the roles, around what the expectations of the task are, as well as the expectations of how are we supposed to work as a group, how often are we supposed to check in, how often are we supposed to talk about it with each other. And there can be a problem with the lack of accountability. So if somebody is not really being held accountable, then that can mean that they don't think that they need to check in with everyone, and it can create a lot of stress with the rest of the team, and it can lead to some group disintegration. Crises as well, so if somebody has a personal crisis, for instance, or if this particular situation that we're in now is affecting people negatively, then that can also lead to a few delays. So that's why it's really important to check in with each other and do that very regularly and very often, to see how everyone is going and to help avoid those kinds of delays that you might experience with the project. So the key thing out of all of these problems really is that prevention is key. So it's useful to have a think about what process are you going to use as a team. The first step is really just establish the team as a social group. So do spend the time to get to know each other first of all. Have a chat about what are your working preferences. Do you prefer to plan well ahead and have really clear boundaries, really clear guidelines about how you're going to interact and how you're going to get the work done? Do you prefer to have a little bit of flexibility in there? If so, how much? How are you going to build that in as a team? How committed are you as well? Do you all want the same grades, for instance? Or are there different people in the group who want a very high grade and others who don't mind so much? In which case, you're going to need to have a chat about that, because that can lead to a lot of conflict later on. So do have a talk with each other about what your expectations are and see if you can reach a bit of a middle ground. And if you can't, if in your team you have very different expectations, then do seek help, do seek external help from your tutor. Have a chat about it with your tutor. But first of all, do that team establishment before doing anything like dividing up the task and so on. Get to know how each other works well. How are you going to get the best out of each other? So once you've done that, then it's time to break down the task and try and understand, first of all, well, what are the expectations? So before even dividing up the different sections, saying you write this bit, you write that bit, and so on, instead have a think as a team about what are the main expectations, are there things that we need to clarify, and what are our goals as a team? Then have a think about the actual ideas. So as a team, going back to that idea that each report has to have a key message, as you go throughout the process, keep going back to brainstorming. So as a team, brainstorm your ideas, talk about them, meet regularly, and keep checking in about what is our key message depending on what we've found. So at that stage, decide on your next steps. So it might be early on you decide on, okay, well, we're going to go and do some research. Then we're going to come back as a team and try and brainstorm our key message depending on what we've found, and brainstorm what are the next steps for us. And then again, divvy it up and so on. You can also at that stage have a think about what are your roles and duties. So early on, think about, are you going to assign a leader to the team? Is somebody going to be the devil's advocate, where they actually propose counter ideas, or they propose different solutions to the problem to be able to test out how robust your process is? Also think about somebody who keeps records, so make sure that you update what your to-do list is, who said that they would do different tasks and so on, to keep everyone on track. You might also think of other roles in terms of somebody who checks in regularly with each other, a bit of a kind of team manager in terms of the social side of things. So keep that checking in going on. After that, have a think about your communication strategies. So which particular tools, which particular strategies are you going to use? You might think about having meeting agendas where you talk about the goal of this meeting is to talk about this topic, and this topic, and keep minutes. So keep a record of what you did talk about, because then you can go back to it and check in and think about, okay, so I said I'd do this. I have this particular question. What do I do now? Who do I go back to ask? So do document that feedback and do document everyone's ideas as you go, because it's helpful to have those on hand. And finally, make sure that you do check in regularly. So it's much better to meet more often than you need to, rather than never meeting and then all at the last minute having to do a ton of work and having resentment build that way. So really meet early, meet often, and check in and see, how is everyone's expectations going? How is your level of commitment going? Are there any potential issues that are going to cause delays with this? If so, how are we as a team going to help each other and resolve the issue, or do we need external help? So some useful tools in terms of online collaboration is to use a meeting platform where you're able to meet regularly and easily to be able to talk and Zoom and Skype are good for that, where you can actually talk to each other and see each other's reactions and so on. Another thing is to keep a chat feed, so emailing or WhatsApp or Facebook and so on, just to have a regular check-in and see how everyone's going, and just to kind of form that social aspect of your team. Also, make sure that you share your calendars to be able to update each other on how we're going, where is our team meeting going to be. And you could, for instance, have a regular time for your meeting, two times a week, for instance. Also, have a think about using a Gantt chart to keep you on track of what are your project goals, who was assigned which tasks and so on, and where are we up to. And that way everyone can check in and see how is the whole project going. Finally, of course, sharing documents, Google Docs and so on makes it really easy. So if problems do continue, so if you find that problems crop up and you can't resolve them as a team, first of all, do try to resolve them as a team, but if you can't, then seek advice from your tutor or your lecturer. You can also come and talk to us about your particular project, and we can try and help you out to figure out, well, what are your next steps? We can also help with your writing, so you can come and see the writing coaches and the learning advisors, where you submit your draft and we give you feedback on your writing. Okay, best of luck, everyone.